For the last 10 years, Catherine Lyle has been working with men in erectile dysfunction, ED, and porn addiction. Having spoken to over 25,000 men in these 10 years, Catherine's research shows that we're losing much more than our men's attention. Catherine says that, and in her research, that watching porn even once a week creates an addiction, and that addiction is like heroin on their brains. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us on You First today. It's been a long journey for me to get you in the studio, so I'm very, very happy to get you here. Catherine's also released a book in 2021 called The Uncensored Threat. So if you want to look that up and get some more research. Catherine, what's happening to our men and to our boys?
So it's the pandemic before the pandemic, and it's been declared a global health crisis by the police and the GPs. And you know when that's happening that it's a fairly serious issue. It's a global problem, and my research came back 97% of men are watching porn regularly. Which
97%.
97%.
Okay, I knew it was a lot.
Yeah, of the men surveyed. And these were men from LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. These weren't my clients. Mm-hmm. And this is a global research study that's been running since 2018. So it came back, they were watching it regularly. Now, this is where the grey area gets, because what you call an addiction and what I call an addiction are two different things. And when it comes to porn addiction, men don't actually acknowledge that it is a thing. Most of the research, when it was released, the guys were like, how is porn addiction a thing? Is that even a thing? Even when I was on the dating scenes, I told them what I did, and they would laugh and say, how is that a thing? We avoid using the word addict or addiction when it comes to porn, because it's the word regularly that is the clincher. So once a month or more is considered a porn addiction, and it's on the bottom end of the scale, but we still look at it, because if they're watching porn once a month and masturbating once a month, then they absolutely hands down have a porn addiction.
Hands down.
Yep.
Don't mind the pun there.
Yep, there's plenty of puns you're going to hear today.
Okay, so porn addiction. What happened? Like, what makes this so terrible?
Yeah.
What makes it so terrible that our boys and our men are watching?
So the thing that people don't understand is what is a porn addiction, other than watching porn. So when we study the science of it, it's an addiction to the brain chemicals. It's not an addiction to boobs and ass. It's a neural addiction. It's not a sex addiction. Mm-hmm. Sex addiction that I've treated has always been a porn addiction that's turned into something else. Porn always comes first normally out of all the addictions as well. The kids have been exposed to it first before drugs and alcohol normally. So a porn addiction is when you watch porn and the brain creates a whole lot of chemicals and hormones that stimulates the brain, stimulates the body. You get the limbic system activating, so you've got hairs on the back of your neck and you're feeling the tingles and the...
So it feels good.
Absolutely. There's endorphins that are produced, so you feel good. There's the serotonin, which is the well-being chemicals. You've got the dopamine, which is the exciting kind of what we call a novelty drug. I like what I see and I want to see more of it. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. And this is all produced in really high levels. And so men are bonding to the act. They're bonding to the porn they're watching. They're getting excitement out of it. The body feels amazing. And if you had watched porn all your life but never masturbated with it, then that's a completely different, you wouldn't be as addicted. It's the coupling of the chemicals and the pleasure together that creates the addiction.
Okay, so we're talking to Catherine Lyle. Catherine Lyle's been working with men around porn addiction for over a decade. So I just want to remind you that if you have little children, or if this is a delicate subject, we want you to listen. You might want to do catch up with us. So Catherine, what I'm just hearing there is it's the coupling of what's happening in our brain and the physical act of the pleasuring.
Yes.
This is where it's the joining of the two that is making it, that's what's creating the addiction?
Correct. Well, the brain cannot function under that level of hormones and chemicals, just like a cocaine addiction. So when you take cocaine, and it is exactly the same as a drug addiction. So that's why we replace the word porn with heroin for guys to get their head around this. And so when the brain produces all these chemicals and hormones, it cannot survive in that state. So it has to change itself. When it changes itself, it then adapts. And then when it starts to come down, just like you do from a drug addiction, it's like coming down off crack. People get antsy and stressed and irritated, and they can't make decisions and they can't focus until the next hit of porn and chemicals. So porn isn't the problem necessarily. It is the chemicals that are being produced in the brain, because when you set that standard, the brain then changes itself, and you have to give the brain the same level of chemicals, and it changes itself. So it gets higher and higher and higher. The stimulus gets higher. The dopamine receptors get worn out. So there's, the porn that you watched, when you were 17 versus what you need to watch now to actually be stimulated is completely different. So when the brain changes itself, it gets addicted to the chemicals and hormones, and you have to keep feeding it. And so that's the addiction.
So this, we were talking before in a very different sense around adaptation. So we're adapting, so we need to add. So what's happening is we need to add more.
Yep.
So it's more, and it's different types of.
Yes.
So Catherine, this is like chasing down a ladder of doom is what it feels like.
Yep.
And the other thing is that this drug is so readily available. It's available in our hand at any given time. Is that correct?
Yes, yep. And I got shown psychically years ago the greyhound race. So it's that little white rabbit that isn't real, and the dogs are chasing it, and they're not meant to catch it, and it's not real, but they don't know that. They're trained to chase this rabbit, and that's what I got shown around porn addiction. Is these guys are running on addictive chemicals and hormones, not realizing, thinking that they're feeling alive and wanting sex and all of this stuff, when it's actually the chemical addiction that's running the show. It's nothing to do with sexual energy, kundalini energy, organic sexual energy, and then they're turning to their partners and expecting that same kind of hit from sex and intimacy and connection, and they're not getting it. And you never will. You'll never ever get the same hit. But we teach men how to have better communication, better open, commitments and connection to their partner, but also I teach them all the energy work, the breath work, the edging, the energy work.
So hang on, let's just backtrack, because where you're going is a place I love. Yeah. So I do want to get there. So Catherine, our men are creating addictions through what they feel. There may not be any alcohol in there. There may not be any drugs in there. There may not be any gambling in there. Yet this that is seen as, and I've also been on the dating scene as an adult, and some of the men, it's one of the first questions I ask, or I drill down pretty quickly, is how. And I don't say, "Do you watch porn?" Because invariably you get no in the early days. So I will say, "What type of porn?"
Yeah,
and that's
and how often?
Yes, and how often, with a non-judgmental voice that's there, but it's I'm digging for the information. Because the other effect is for women, and this is what this program is about, we're speaking to women, is that being in relationship with a man that has a porn addiction means for us, we don't have the connection.
Correct. It's impossible for a man to have a connection with their partner on the level at which we are born to do, which is the energy, the breath work, feeling like you're leaving your body, not understanding whether your head's up or down in terms of, let's say, positions and what men focus on. It's about, connection through kissing and energy work without even intercourse, and you are on a different planet. You don't know what's going on. You're leaving your body. This is the connection stuff, and this is how sex is meant to be. But men are incapable of that if they're watching porn, 100%. I mean, I'm an energy worker. I can put someone in front of me and I can feel how high their energy level is, their chi, their life force energy. I work with kundalini. But
we can, even without that, Catherine, I'm going to say, being with a partner that was using porn, which I didn't know about, that I can feel that as well. Like, I know that it's not working. And then what happens being the partner, and so for you listening at home or, out walking or wherever you are today listening back to this, is I felt gaslit because I was being told that was my problem. So talk to us about what happens for the woman.
So there's the number one cause of ED is porn, and it's been about 98% of the clients that I've treated. I've treated about 5,000 clients. Not all of them were for porn addiction. I haven't always advertised that I've specialised in this. I work very heavily in mental health, depression, anxiety, and so men would come in and talk about their ED and talk about their anxiety, but they didn't want to talk about the porn. So it's the number one cause. Now, women blame themselves hands down, there's the pun again, every single time when there's erectile dysfunction. It's a subconscious thing that we think that they're not turned on
by us,
or that there's something we're not doing, and then therefore it's our fault.
Catherine, I will also say on that, and again, as in the past, a woman on the dating scene, is that they come into the new relationship knowing that there's ED.
Correct.
And then
and they don't say anything.
They don't say anything. And I know for myself, it was, okay, well, what's happening here? Like, this is not. And then there's all these stories around there, there's, well, it could be the alcohol that I had. It could be this. It could be that. It could be that.
Yeah. They will often, they're not blaming the woman, but the woman's blaming herself, and they're not saying anything. So therefore, they're enabling that situation. I'm trying to teach, especially the single men, to actually go in with an open communication conversation first before they even, the clothes come off, so that there's that warning to women that, and I know lots of men that I treat, they have those conversations eventually after working with me, but the women are still blaming themselves, still thinking it's them, and looking for, that's their belief system. And so they're not actually believing the men when they actually say it either. So this is why we're working with women more now, to educate them around how to go about this, that it's not their fault. It's got nothing to do with them. I've had plenty of conversations with men, unfortunate conversations where, they've come in and blamed the women to me and said, she was ugly. I couldn't get it up. And I'm like, I have to drop all of my judgments and as a woman and just take a deep breath and say, hang on a second, actually, how much porn are you watching? And it's only every day. It's only once a day. I'm like, well, that's what it is. And then we look at how old they are and how old they were when they first saw porn. And, some of them, they're 50, 60-year-old porn addictions. These men are in their 80s and 70s, and they're still refusing to believe that this is a thing. So, Catherine, the gaslighting is a thing.
Let's have a look at, just before we go to the song that you've chosen for us, let's have a look at, for a woman that's going either into a relationship or a woman that is in a relationship where there is, you're thinking maybe that there's some porn going on, some porn watching, or maybe there's a little bit of ED, so erectile dysfunction. What can she look out for? How can she broach the subject? How can she educate herself? Can we share with our listeners what can we do as women, and filling our own cup first?
Yes. So we have, there's a guide on my website that men can look at, and it's also very useful for women on how to tell your partner you have a porn addiction. And that was created by myself and another practitioner, male practitioner, who treats men, but he had a porn addiction. And we sat on the couch trying to work out the most safest, open conversation that we could have about that. And it's got some tips in there for the men and also the women, because unfortunately, when I do the work with the men and they then tell their partners or tell women, it's not received well. Obviously, it feels like betrayal. There's more to it than just the porn. It feels like a lie, and therefore, what else are you lying about? And I didn't know about this, and so there's a lot of kind of aspects to this conversation. But the women, I engage. I encourage them to engage on the dating site before you even meet someone. Have a conversation about it. So many people, men and women, approach me and say, the sex sex life was really bad and this was really bad and the relationship's really bad. And I say, well, go back to when you first met. Did you talk about any of this to begin with? No. And so communication is the number one thing around this. And discovering and deciding as a woman before you go into those conversations, what are your standards? What are you accepting? Do you know what porn addiction is? And do you know the effects of it, the mental effects, the brain damage, like all of the things?
I think that's really key. So number one for a woman is to educate ourselves. So I'll speak to the women that are on the dating scene that are listening here. Please educate yourself. So Catherine's website, and we'll give that to you after the next break. Catherine's website will give you an understanding of what a porn addiction is and how it presents. And then also for you to understand around your part in this, and if you choose to go into a relationship with someone that truly is an addict.
Correct. I mean, I was single for 14 years and I refused because of the work that I did. You know, I was on the dating scene before I did this work. And so in hindsight, I look back and see all of these men, okay, now I understand there's the signs there. There's other signs apart from ED, distraction, not being able to focus. Typical ADHD symptoms are the symptoms of a porn addict, not being able to make decisions. It's all the brain damage at the frontal lobe, which is mental health. So depression, anxiety. Anxiety, you very rarely meet someone that doesn't have anxiety, that has a porn addiction, even if they haven't identified it.
So what you were talking then, Catherine, is around the frontal lobe.
Correct.
So this is this executive decision making and rational thought.
Yep.
So it's a key one to look out for.
Control panel of your personality as well. So a lot of men that are aware of their porn addiction will approach me because they feel like there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of I'm a bad person and I can't stop and, you know, this type of thing. And that's because it has become part of their identity, because it does affect that part of the brain. You know, controlling sexual behaviours also comes from the frontal lobe. So porn addiction normally, if not every time, turns into something else if they don't stop it.
All right. So Catherine, my words are going because I've got so many questions for you. You are listening to You First. It's a show about fitting your own oxygen mask on. We've brought you today Catherine Lyle. Catherine Lyle's worked with men for over a decade, and particularly in the space of porn addiction, understanding what porn addiction is, and then also how to treat porn addiction. Catherine was saying just then that the symptoms of the addiction often present like ADHD. Catherine, we'll come back after this track and we'll share with you treatment. So this is not a lost cause.
Yep.
So treatment, how to get treatment, how to have the knowledge, where to go and what to do. Tell us about this track, Kath. We are talking to Catherine Lyle. I do want to let you know, if you've got little gentle ears, we're dealing with some delicate subjects here. So if you have young children or sensitive at the moment, I promise you will want to listen to what Catherine's talking about, but maybe later on a catch-up might be better, or pop your headphones in. So Catherine Lyle has worked with men over the last 10 years, over 25,000 men. She's also written a book called The Uncensored Threat. Today we are talking about porn addiction and erectile dysfunction, that we will refer to as ED throughout our conversation here. Catherine was talking about the negative effects and how the addiction causes the chemical changes in the brain, and it's like heroin in the brain of a porn addict. And a porn addict is somebody that potentially is watching porn once a day.
Once a month or more.
Once a month or more is what it is. Catherine, we've had some messages come through on SMS, and they're saying, if we have a partner, or when we have a partner that comes to us and says, you know, I watch porn, how do we as women, how do we hold that space and not feel betrayed?
Yeah, so my advice to women, because of the men's work that I've done and because I've seen this go pear-shaped way too many times, it is the number one best kept secret in the world. So I've asked every single client that I've spoken to, over 5,000 men, have you told your partner? Occasionally they'll say, yeah, she knows I watch porn, and I say, have you told her exactly what you just told me? The frequency, what you're watching, what time of the day, where, so work, in the car, all of that, in the toilet. And the answer is no, 100%.
would say no.
Yep. So it's the best kept secret in terms of addiction. And so when we want the women to be in receiving mode in terms of education, information, and acknowledgements from the men, because and in order to do that, the men need to feel safe. Now, we want to hold the men accountable, but we also need to let them off the hook a little bit, because the brain is ruling the show, and
this is an addiction.
They can't stop.
The same if it was an alcohol, a gambling,
exactly the same,
a drug.
Yep.
They
can't just choose to stop because you're upset or because you don't want them to. They can't even choose to stop because they want to a lot of the time. So we have to put that disclaimer out there to women, because I am a woman and I know how heartbreaking this can be if you've been together with someone for 20, 30 years and they admit after doing work with me that they've had this, they've been watching porn every day for your whole entire relationship. It's a betrayal. And, we're also the thought of, for some women it's okay, and then I'd question, why is it okay? There's a lot of enabling going on. Society enables it. That's what boys do. That's what men do. That's where they get their sex education from.
That's frightening.
It's how you spice up a relationship. Like there's a lot of, coaches and associations justifying it, and enabling it, and it's causing major problems in the body. So we have to, as women, be open to any secrets that are being shared with us in a way that doesn't further trigger the man or the person who is, admitting these things, because they don't feel safe, because they would have told you already probably. They don't want the confrontation. They don't want the psychopathic, tendencies to come back at them, is what they'll say.
That's not, I just want to put a caveat on that. That's not our language. That's what women will hear.
Yeah. That's what the men are saying. She's a bit of a psycho sometimes. And I'm like, you're in the wrong relationship for starters. He's
in the wrong relationship with himself, Catherine, because of his addiction.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are suffering mental health issues that aren't, doing the work and addressing. So let's go to this position here. So he has shared, he's realised it is an addiction. He goes to her, he tells her he's got addiction. So what we're saying to her is to be able to hold the space. Hold space. Yeah.
Now, in that it's great. He's offloaded it. Yep. He's just told us, I've got an addiction.
Yes.
Ta-da, all sorted.
Yeah. And that's how they often feel, is it's
what's
done.
What's next?
Yes. So what's next is take a time out. I would recommend, but make sure you come back. So just say, I'm going to just process what you've told me, because sitting there in front of the person, there's a lot of expectations on how you're meant to act. You might feel a lot of anger and betrayal and a whole lot of emotions coming up and you don't even know what it is, or you might be like, well, what does that even mean? So there's confusion, or, there's no education and you don't even know what that means. And he probably doesn't know what it means either. So, it's really important that you take that time, go and have a shower, but state that you're coming back. It's really important when you leave a discussion that you say, I just need 5 minutes. I'm going to come back in a minute. Don't go on your phone. Don't contact your best friend. Don't say, oh my God, I've just been told this. It's private information between you.
That's easy to do, Catherine, because this is so big. How do we contain it ourselves?
Yeah.
And I know with my relationship with Jane, there's times when, and I'm very grown up at times, Jane's still in the studio, where I go, no, I'm going to sort this one out myself. But I will often go, I want to spill it over because I can't actually hold it myself.
Yes, exactly. And you can do that eventually, because that's what women do. Yeah. But in that moment, on that day, it's really important that you allow him to reveal how he's feeling, what it's doing to him, why he's telling you, that type of thing. So having my number one answer for communication when you feel threatened or unsafe, or unless you're being abused in a conversation, is ask a question. It changes the energy. It shifts the energy for you. It puts you in the inquirer mode instead of on the defense. You can tell him how it's made you feel, but in a calm way. I'm really, really angry. I don't even know what to do with this information. My body's feeling all weird. I feel like you've cheated on me. You can state all of those things, but you've got to keep calm, and then ask him what he's going to do about it. And that's the important part. And if they don't know what to do about it, then, I have a...
So, Catherine, on that was one of the other messages that just came through on our text line. So if you're listening live and you would like to connect with us on our text line, I'm going to get you to call 0412 987 987. That's not a call, that's an SMS.
Yes, beautiful.
So the question on our text line is, can the relationship be recovered?
It absolutely can, but without the honesty, it's probably going on without you knowing anyway. And so it's like, are you better off not knowing or better off knowing? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. When they do tell you, it's important that there are next steps, because that you can't recover from that. I would also recommend that the woman get some kind of therapy or healing around this, to understand how it's affecting her, so that she can deal with any triggers, even from the past. There might have been past relationships, past abuse. Ask any woman, and she's had some very unsafe or unsavory situations when it comes to sexuality, the way she's been treated, slapped and, spat on and hair pulled and things like that. And that all comes from porn culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed, what they're watching and they think is, and even anatomically, how a woman is to look. And that's a whole nother discussion. We might take that one off air.
Yeah. So it's important to just hold space for yourself and for him, and then, go off and cry and go off and get your healing and go and speak to your psychologist or your healer, or, me, I treat women as well. I treat couples where we're working on this from a 360 point of view, even the children as well. So it's really important. My biggest question is, when it comes to kids and teens, is how do you as a father teach your children about this as an addiction that is exactly the same as a drug addiction? How do you teach them that when you're under the influence of porn yourself? And if the woman is flying blind and she doesn't understand or know that you're watching porn, she doesn't know anything about porn, then how do you parent your children around this? And you need to start at a really early age, age appropriate, but, the kids are getting access to porn now at 5 to 8 years old. That's what we're saying.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, Catherine, Jane's in the studio with us now. We're both mothers of boys. Mm-hmm. So we've been talking predominantly about being in an intimate relationship with a partner or a potential partner if we're dating. But we're mothers of boys. Mm-hmm. So this also pertains to what we choose to share now that we've got this knowledge.
Yes. So my first book was aimed at parents and teachers and coaches and, anyone that's sports clubs and things like that. Because there was an ebook before that, and that was just for the men. And it's like, but hang on a second, if everyone else around the men doesn't understand this, then the men are isolated, both in a good way and a sneaky way. The dopamine addiction is also from keeping it a secret. And so when we bring it out into the open, it's really important. So this first book is aimed at them. It has a note at the start in terms of how you actually talk to your kids about this. It's for kids from the age of 14 plus can actually read the ebook, and then from anyone under that age, you read the ebook and then you deliver that information in an age appropriate manner.
Thank you. So that's on your website, Catherine?
Yes. Yep.
What's your website?
It's integratedmenshealth.com.au.
Fantastic. So integratedmenshealth.com.au under resources?
It's there's a tab called porn and sexual health.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Jane, you've got some questions. I can see you bubbling away there.
I just want to jump in and say, so I had a discussion with one of my sons. He was probably around the age of 16, and I brought this topic up, and bless him, he goes, "Oh, Mum, I've dealt with it already." I'm like, Oh, okay. And he goes, yeah, I've decided that it doesn't make me feel good when I'm watching it, and it never looks like the woman is having a good time.
That's amazing.
I'm like, you're amazing. He goes, so my mate, they'd been talking about it together. He said, we've both decided we're not going to watch it anymore.
That's amazing.
Great. End of discussion. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, by 16, most kids have watched porn or seen it. The stats came back 97% of boys, and this is a global study, had seen porn. 50% of those are watching it every day already by the time of 18.
And can I just say, he also told me that a lot of girls in his year were watching it as well.
We're seeing
that surprised me.
We're seeing that come through very much so, that these generations since the smartphone that are growing up with it in their pockets, it just becomes the norm. And unfortunately, we're finding that, child-on-child sexual assault is happening. It's 400%. It's up 400%, and that was a stat from years ago. The courts are overwhelmed with all of the reports, and they're the ones that are reported. There's lots of, their brains are still developing until the age of 27. So if you're going to introduce any kind of addiction, including gaming also kind of goes alongside porn addiction. Because of the dopamine hits that they're getting. And so kids at the age of 16 are already, seeing it, knowing it. We're seeing lots of reports from GPs, from, girls that have had genital or, other types of wounds that we won't mention on radio.
So, Catherine, this is a much, much bigger topic than sort of like, I don't want to know about this. This doesn't relate to me. I've been in a long-term relationship. It's nothing. In just the thought that, Jane, you and I have boys, and that discussion that you had with one of your boys, and then you've also said that girls are as well. Yep. How do we find you? Who's doing this work to support? Who's doing tell us about the resources, how we can get to you.
Sure. So there's a lot of people going into schools now doing some great work around consent and boundaries. And, I kind of talk to those people, but a lot of them are just academics. They're not doing the work. They're not practitioners. They're not working with the hands-on stuff, the brain, the mental health, the energy, all of the, I'm a kinesiologist, so I'm working with, stuck emotions in the body. And so I can't treat teens unless there's a parental acknowledgement, which can absolutely happen if the kids they don't even have to admit what's happening to the parents, because they won't want to talk about it a lot of the time. And so it's just that, they need to see me for gaming addiction is normally what I see young boys for.
Okay, so if there's gaming, then there's very much likely.
Yeah, and then we get the parents in on the first session, whether it's in person or on Zoom, for the first kind of half an hour. And then we ask permission. Does the kid feel okay? Does the adult feel okay? Are we all okay to now take it over to me? And then that's when I start talking to the child about pornography, what it does, and then eventually asking them, because when you first ask them, they'll say, oh yeah, I've seen it. And then, by the end of the session, it's actually, I'm watching it every day, and what you're telling me is scaring me. About 60% of the people that contact me on Instagram in DMs are under 18. Most of them are around 13. And I didn't know when they first contacted me that these were kids, because they were talking about erections and ED and porn addiction. And so I've learnt straight up, I ask people, where are you located and how old are you? Because I can't treat them. But I'm the only port of call for them. I mean, what are we going to do?
Right. Where do we find... So the resources that you have on your website, integratedmenshealth.com.au, so please jot that down. Yep. You've got ebooks. You've also got the ability to purchase or a link through to the Uncensored Threat, your published book. You've also got a 2-week challenge coming up as well.
Yep. So the 2-week challenge can run at any time. It's just called that. And it's a self-pleasure challenge for men to work out where they're at with this. And so they're asked to self-pleasure without watching porn, and they'll start to see, the ED and the problems with mental capacity and making decisions. And there's a tracking sheet that comes with it. There's a checklist that comes with it. And so we're starting to teach them in a mini program on, what to do themselves.
Brilliant. 30-day program, and then you've also got, you are seeing clients in clinic in p0rn as well. So there's so much on this website to educate. So for the women that are listening today, we brought you Catherine. It was an uncomfortable subject and an uncomfortable topic. Please share this podcast. Please share this website with other women and families and adults in your life and the children in your life as well. Catherine Lyle, thank you so much for coming into the studio today to share. You. And I'm really glad I was so persistent to get you on board.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maz.
You've been listening to You First. It is a show all about you and supporting you, putting your oxygen mask on first. We want to educate you, we want to inspire you, and we want to give you the option to live a better, more joyful, more fun time. Enjoy. See you next week.